This is Voice of Korea.
This is Voice of Korea.
This is Voice of Korea.
This is Voice of Korea. Dear listeners, now we start the English language service of Voice of Korea from Pyongyang, the capital of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Here is a mixed chorus, song of General Kim Il-sung. male chorus. Fourth General Kim Song-il. You are listening to VOK, Voice of Korea, News Now. Kenichi Ogami, Secretary General of the International Institute of the Tzu-Tae-Deer and his party, visited the Kumsusan Palace of the Sun and paid respects to the great leaders Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il on the 8th. Vice Chairman of the Central Committee of the Workers' Party of Korea visited the Cheon's Township area of Yangdo County on the 8th. The township area of Yangdo County was visited by Park Bong-ju, member of the Presidium of the Political Bureau of the Central Committee of the Workers' Party of Korea, Vice Chairman of the State Affairs Commission of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, and Vice Chairman of the Party Central Committee. Visiting together with him were Park Kwang-ho, Lee Su-yong, Park Tae-dok, Park Tae-sung, and Kim Yong-chol, Vice Chairman of the Party Central Committee. They looked around the room for education in revolutionary history. They also commanded a bird's-eye view of the township square from the observatory and went round the peculiar block for treatment and recuperation, hotel, and self-cooking inn. Lee Su-yong, Vice Chairman of the Central Committee of the Workers' Party of Korea, gave a statement to media on the 9th. The statement said, Trump is very anxious about what we are thinking and uneasy about what we are going to do. The speeches and expressions recently made by Trump may sound threatening, but they are clear proof that he is seized with fear. Trump may be restless, but he must admit the reality that ill sowers make ill harvests. He had better ponder over if he dislikes to see more serious catastrophic disaster. Our final judgment and decision to be made late this year arrived the chairman of the State Affairs Commission, and he has not clarified any stand as yet. He has not used any ironical and provocative phrases against the opponent either.
Trump's reckless remarks, which can possibly irritate the chairman of the State Affairs Commission, must be stopped. Kim Yong-chul, chairman of the Korea-Asia-Pacific Peace Committee, gave a statement to media on the 9th. The statement said, U.S. President continues to release inappropriate and risky speeches and expressions even after our warning on the 5th. We clarified on the 5th our clear stand to watch if the U.S. President repeats provocative expressions, escalating confrontation, and take it serious if he uses strange remarks and phrases concerning us again on purpose. As known to the world, Trump, in the press conferences on the 7th and the 8th, and in an article, released at random such speeches and expressions like a threat that though he does not think that we are going to meddle in the elections, he would watch. If North Korea makes any hostile acts, he would be surprised, and if North Korea commits any hostile acts, it will lose everything. It is really disappointing. His phrases clearly betray that he is an old man without patience and he is in uneasiness. I wonder the time will possibly come to call him dotard for his reckless and erratic speech. Clearly speaking once again, Chairman of the State Affairs Commission of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea has not made any provocative remarks against the U.S. President as yet. There has been no such phrases, possibly for his patience, of course. However, if Trump is allowed to continue in such a way, the viewpoint of the chairman of the State Affairs Commission on Trump might be changed, I think. If Trump had made such speeches to convince us, he had better know that his bluff sounds abnormal and unreasonable to us, and each of his words makes laughing stock of himself. We have neither intention to consider what we should do in the future, nor need to worry about for his strange speech. Trump does not know the DPRK too much. We have nothing to lose. The United States may try to deprive us of anything more, but it can never deprive us of our self-respect, strength, and fury against the United States. Trump said he would be surprised if we make any actions. Of course, he'll be astonished. Any acts, if we make, are to surprise him. So, if he's not surprised, we'll be irritating. This year comes to an end. If Trump has any will and wisdom to stop the moment of conflict, it would be wiser for him to take time to make sincere speculation and calculation, rather than selecting laughable, haughty, and threatening expressions as now. Time delaying is not a good prescription. If the United States has no courage and wisdom, he would have no choice but to watch with anxiety the present reality threatening more and more the security of the United States.
Successes are reported at forestry and pork production stations and the Lianggang Provincial Forestry Management Bureau. Workers of the stations have produced tens of thousands cubic meters of logs necessary for major projects, such as the construction of the Wonsan-Kama Coastal Tourist Area and the Dancheon Power Station, done according to the grand construction plan of the Workers' Party of Korea. They are operating the facilities at full capacity and actively introducing efficient working methods, achieving greater successes in production. The Pupo offshore farm in the DPRK has put 100,000 fries of fugu reprise into sea this year by establishing a scientific spawning and breeding method. In cooperation with researchers of the Nampo University of Fisheries, the farm took the spawning and hatching of fugu reprise and the rearing of its fries on a scientific basis to suit its biological and migratory character. In the course, it ensured uniform supply oxygen and raised the hatching rate 1.7 times. By solving the feed problem in keeping with the characteristics of fries, the farm bred more than 100,000 fries with 5 millimeters of length for 2 months. Brass wares are estimated as popular ones in the DPRK. Especially those brasswares produced by the Pyongyang Daesung Geo Trading Company have become famous goods and commodities favored by people because they are light, graceful in shape, and beautiful in color. This year, many products, including brass kettle, have been registered as excellent ones. Chafing dish, brass spoon and chopsticks, brass vessel for noodle, and brass rice bowl have already been evaluated as the best home products. Copper and zinc in brassware have sterile action and are efficacious for anemia. Different kinds of brasswares have classical beauty and elegant and unique shapes with ornamental reliefs by delicate workmanship. They are widely used at homes for their utility and artistic value. Koreans have long used them in their everyday life. The brass products won a high popularity at scores of fairs and exhibitions held in different countries of Asia and Europe, and they are in great demand. Power saving is active in the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Industrial establishments and many other units and families across the country have established their own power production system and introduced new saving technology. In this way, they are saving power by diverse methods in scale and form. The Bukchang Area Youth Coal Mining Complex has established its integrated power control system and put the power control on an IT and scientific basis, making it possible to save millions of kilowatts per hour in a year. The Pyongyang Hotel has introduced a circulating water heating system which combines the solar water heater, geothermal pump, and power-saving water heater. As a result, it is fully conducting service activities while saving 70% of electric power as against before. Industrial establishments in the field of chemical industry, such as the Sunyoung Paints Factory and the Bonghwa Chemical Factory, are remaking the equipment into power-saving lines. Many families in the provinces, cities, and counties are using solar water heater, solar panel, and wind-driven generator with different capacity.
And that's the end of the news read by Cha Yun-yong and Kim Hyun-ok. This is Voice of Korea.
This time, we present the immortal masterpiece, Song of Best Wishes, written by the great leader Kim Jong-il on June 1st, 2042 or 1953, during the Great Fatherland Liberation War, representing the ardent wish of the Korean people for good health of the fatherland leader Kim Il-sung, the destiny and future of the country and nation. the last days of his great life. The great leader Kim Jong-il, the benevolent father of the Korean people, found himself on the road of field guidance for the people in the last days of his life as well. With burning energy, he ceaselessly visited many places of the country, including the Kasan News Park, the Hamong Knitwear Factory, the Hungnam Leather Shoes Factory, and the Songcheongang Shipping Station. He called at the Gwangbok area supermarket on December the 15th, Juche 100 or 2011. He was very pleased to see the supermarket, which has been changed into a modern commercial service center. Park Sun-young, official of the Gwangbok area supermarket, said,
한겨울에 맵싼 날씨도 마다하지 않으시고 우리 상점에 찾아오신 위대한 장로님께서는 인민생활
despite the biting cold of midwinter, the great Kim Jong-il visited our supermarket and said with pleasure that the commercial service center to be conducive to the improvement of the people's living had been wonderfully built. That day, he looked around counters one by one for a long time and took necessary measures, saying the supermarket, built with much effort, can prove effective when the people buy goods they want. She said, as the supermarket has been built, we came to more fully satisfy the increasing demand of the people for the commodities. Seeing the commodities filling the counters, I feel my heart warm even on the cold day. I am most pleased when I have done something for the people, he warmly said. Really, we cannot forget him, no matter how many years may go by. The Korean people still remember the devotion of Kim Jong-il, who made uninterrupted field guidance tour even in the last days of his great life, and found his pleasure in the happiness of the people. So far, you've been listening to an account under the title, In the Last Days of His Great Life. This is Voice of Korea. Winner Prisoner Violin Ensemble, Our Sun and Star. enjoy the song, "Oh, Wonderful Marshal Kim Jong-un." Looking at the unusually shining stars, I long for Marshal Kim Jong-un. I miss all the more tonight his kind and bright smile. Oh, where is fatherly Marshal Kim Jong-un? Longing for his warm embrace, I wish him good health. enjoy an instrumental quartet, Best Wishes. You enjoy your female trio and male chorus, Our National Flag. for violin. Prosper the era of the Workers' Party.
Winner being a female, Khabarovsk, the future of Korea.
타오르네 하나의 빛이며
viewers, with this we conclude the English language service of Voice of Korea from the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Voice of Korea presents its English language service for Europe between 15 and 16 hours UTC, between 18 and 19 hours UTC, between 21 and 22 hours UTC, and between 13 and 14 hours UTC on 7,570 kHz and 12,015 kHz. For North America, between 15 and 16 hours UTC and between 13 and 14 hours UTC on 9,435 kHz and 11,710 kHz. And for Northeast Asia, between 4 and 5 hours UTC and between 6 and 7 hours UTC on 7,220 kHz, 9,445 kHz, and 9,730 kHz. Goodbye, this is Pyongyang.
城市风速段。北京多云转晴，零下4到8度。海滨多云，零下16到零下4度。长江阵雪，零下11到零下2度。美兰有晴，6到3度。天津多云，零下2到4度。四川在晴，零下14到0度。多云有雨雾，零下9到0度。临川晴，零下9度。金陵晴，5到5度。兰州晴，零下7到6度。西安晴，零下13度。嘉夏晴转多云，零下4度。杭州晴转多云，8到15度。重庆晴9到16度。后辽多云3到15度。昆明晴1到15度。太原晴0到15度。石家庄晴零下3到12度。济南晴零下1到14度。郑州晴1到10度。雷多云转晴3到20度。南京晴6到18度。上海晴8到17度。武汉多云3到17度。成都晴6到21度。南方晴6到19度。杭州晴转多云6到19度。苏州多云转晴11到21度。达州多云17到25度。辽宁晴9